It's a very simple recipe. Take 2 wheels, add the 2 most famous names in motorcycling, sprinkle in a little history, and you have the Harley-Davidson Museum, the site of this week's edition of Topcoat's Magnificent Machines. Welcome to Topcoat's Magnificent Machines. We are at the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm so excited to take you through and show you so much that is here to see, and we've got a lot to do. And you know what, Bill, we're going to jump right in with our very first bike, go all the way back to what you call serial number 1.
Yeah, what we have is a 1903-04 vintage Harley-Davidson motorcycle. They didn't even have names in those days, and it represents those very first production bikes that rolled out of the Harley-Davidson little wooden shed factory in 1903.
What I also find interesting is the marks on the floor here. This kind of gives us an idea of what size shed the guys worked in.
Yeah, what I'm standing in is a footprint that's 10 by 15 feet, and that was the very first wooden shed. I almost say it's like a glorified ice fishing shed. And the only reason they did that is because they were kind of gently kicked out of the basement of the Davidson home. William C. Davidson said, would you please take your project out in the backyard and finish it there? The original idea was motorcycles for themselves, and then at some point said, you know what, let's sell them.
And I'm glad they did.
So am I.
Now we're to 1907, which was a huge year for the company. They incorporated. They also went to their very first auto show to try to get dealers for their Harley-Davidson motorcycles, even offering an incentive for every 5th bike ordered. Of course, Harley-Davidson, you think of motorcycles, but when it comes down to it, the name of the company was Harley-Davidson Motor Company. And Bill, they were doing a lot of developing and experimenting, and that's what we have with this 1909.
Right, this is the first an attempt at a saleable V-twin for Harley-Davidson. Basically, it didn't really fly, and so they were pulled, and 2 years later they had a V-twin that was very much modified and much more successful. But we've even have evidence in the archives that they were bringing experimental V-twins to races and hill climbs as early as 1907. That 45-degree V-twin engine is what people come to think of as Harley-Davidson's now. There's a certain cadence to it, there's a certain sound, and so it's become just really part of our DNA.
And when they were developing this, what they put together, like about 10 of them?
We believe 27 total.
Okay.
This is the sole surviving Harley-Davidson 1909 twin. The only place in the world somebody could see one is here.
From the get-go, Harley-Davidson has been heavily involved in motorsports, from board racing to cross-country, and of course, even the cinder track racing. But the one that really gets me the most is the hill climbing. These guys were absolutely nuts, but man, did it put on a great show. But you know something else? Harley-Davidson, they just flat like to go fast.
When you think of like motorcycle racing today, this would have been like the prototype class, almost like a MotoGP class of its time. You know, it's 8 valves, so you're doubling up on your intake, your exhaust. This is all purpose-built for racing. It's very lightweight. They're doing this on board tracks, and these are, you know, some people call them motordromes. Today we call them board tracks. In the old days they were motordromes. These are racetracks made entirely out of wood. These guys would race in very small groups, and like, you know, racers would call it the draft or the slipstream now. And the old saying was that you could put a blanket over the entire field of racers, and, you know, woe to you if you fell out of that group. There's more aerodynamic drag out of you, and you're going to fall behind.
Something else that I'm noticing as I'm looking at the bike, what do we have on the left-hand side of the tank?
Right, that's an oil pump.
Okay.
This is an era of motorcycles that the oil is basically something that the rider is responsible for. They were not using mechanical pumps.
We're just getting started on the history of Harley-Davidson, and when we return, we'll see how the company brought some color to the drab days of the Depression. Top Coat's Magnificent Machines will be back in a moment.
Top Coat's Magnificent Machines is brought to you by Steel Rubber Products, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping, Clamp Tight, the clamp making tool, and by Top Coat, the best coatings in the world.
Welcome back to Top Coat's Magnificent Machines. In 1925, Harley-Davidson came out with their streamlined version. Pretty much everything in the late 20s and early 30s were all using that terminology. And while it was a great looking bike, it was still kind of a drab olive green. But that was all about to change for Harley in the next couple of years. You know, in 1933, Harley-Davidson gave the consumer something pretty exciting with using very little money, and that's color.
Exactly. You know, in the automotive world, it goes on today where, you know, you can't come out with a new engine every year. And they certainly could in those days, and the dealers were asking for one. They were asking for whole new bikes. And what the company could do was give a whole new explosion of color. Two-tone schemes that you see with these beautiful Art Deco designs. Hand striping, which just amazes me. The Harley's paint department had hand stripers. And it worked. I mean, there was motorcycle companies closing their doors at this time. It's really the low point of the Great Depression, but it ends up where Harley becomes thought of more as a styling leader.
In 1936, the Harley-Davidson EL was out, and this is where the knucklehead came from, but Harley-Davidson didn't call it the knucklehead.
No, as a matter of fact, in later years, it was custom builders and chopper builders that started applying nicknames to Harley engines. So it's funny, in later years when Harley actually tried to nickname its own engines, it didn't take. It's one of those things that, like, it only works when the customers own it.
Yeah, and then it just catches on like wildfire. This bike almost wasn't released.
Exactly. Within a very short time before its launch, there was discussion of at least shelving the project. And had Harley not come out with this bike, history might have played out very differently, because this is really a foundational motorcycle for us. And so many motorcycles that even are built out of Harley-Davidson factories today borrow something from this bike.
This is also, you know, when I think about riding my Harley, I look right down on top of the tank, and there it tells me everything that's going on, my speed, everything else. That was new for this year.
Exactly, the dashboard. I mean, we call it the dashboard, but the instrumentation, which they started styling things like that previously maybe no styling thought was given to it at all. So it didn't have to just work, it had to look halfway decent.
While the consumer edition of the EL bike was a little shy of 100 miles per hour, probably top speed, that's not what we have here.
No, what we have here is a purpose-built land speed record attempt bike based on the EL's engine. In later years, they came to call this bike the Bluebird for obvious reasons. But Joe Petrali, the great champion racer of the 1930s, was the man with the honors on this one.
You know, some of the things I noticed when I'm taking a look at this bike, right up front, that looks like a gas tank that they've cut off to be kind of like the fairing on the front.
That's absolutely what it is. They didn't need to get real high-tech, or at least didn't feel the need to. And if you get a good look at that tachometer, it's actually hand-drawn. You look at that tailpiece, and it's obvious that they were trying to reduce the drag, the aerodynamic drag. On the practice runs, it was vibrating, so it had a bit of a wobble to it. So they actually figured, why not try it without, and put a stock motorcycle suit on it, and that actually went faster. Even if, you know, people don't know the story, it's so striking to look at. It really looks like one of those kind of space age or steampunk things from the 30s.
From the racetracks where it's fun to a very useful tool out in the field, Harley-Davidson was really beginning to make a name for themselves, just like with this 1936 model that we see that still had the flathead in it, not quite the knucklehead yet, but that, of course, would all change. What would also change was when the war came around and Harley stepped up to bat. During World War II, you know, a lot of manufacturing companies were being retooled. They had to make products that were completely different than what they were set up to do. But that's not the case with Harley-Davidson. And that's what we have here with this WLA. This bike, I mean, you guys made a bazillion of them for the Army.
Yes, Harley-Davidson's production really ramped up during World War II, and they came out with the WLA, which is the mainstay military bike. It's not the only military bike that Harley made, but at least 70,000 of these came out. And that doesn't even count some of the, like I mentioned, the lesser known bikes from that period. Military contracting is always very, very specific, like the blackout lighting, so to speak. So when a soldier's riding at night, the last thing he wants to do is advertise that he's there.
We've also got a couple other ones. One of them's the XS.
Right, the XS is a sidecar version of the XA model, which basically was like a BMW type knockoff. But the XS is so rare, it's believed only 3 were even built just for the Army to evaluate them for possible use, and then that project was dropped. So if you come here and see the XS, you're seeing the only one left.
Wow, and that's not the only one. There was another one as well that was actually more like a patrol type bike, and there were only 40 of those made.
Right, the U.S. Navy Shore Patrol bikes. And again, there's some level of adaptation from civilian models with that, like you had with the WLA. In fact, there was a civilian bike, the WL, and then the A just added the Army version, the adaptation.
Well, after World War II, there were a whole lot of these Army bikes that were left over, available relatively cheap and surplus. But people didn't necessarily want to remember the war by them, so what do? They customized them, just like this bobber that we see here. And you know what? We're going to show you just how crazy people can get with some of their customization when we have more of Top Coat's Magnificent Machines after this. Welcome back to Top Coat's Magnificent Machines as we continue our visit here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Harley-Davidson Museum. And Jim, you've got such a collection here. This has got to be quite the fun job for you.
Yeah, it's actually not my collection. It's the Harley-Davidson Archives collection, but it is incredible. It's unparalleled, I think, not only in the motorcycle world, but for any major manufacturer to have such a comprehensive record of their accomplishments is, to my knowledge, unique.
We're on the first floor right now, but there are 2 floors here. The majority of the motorcycles, very close to almost all of them, are unrestored, and that means a lot to you guys.
Yeah, well, that's what makes the collection truly unique. Aside from the fact that it was actually the Harley-Davidson founders that sort of set those bikes aside when they were new. They've been moved around a lot, so some of them, though it's all original paint, there's a dent somewhere, it fell over or something. But
they have life stories.
That's part of the story.
Absolutely. We know Harley-Davidson makes a lot of great motorcycles, but did you know back in 1960, they were making a scooter named the Topper? How about some of these smaller motorcycles, smaller motor stuff? But I think it would have been really fun to have gone out and splashed around in the waves in a Harley-Davidson boat, or out on the golf course in your Harley-Davidson golf car. But that's not all. They also had some other small little, almost mini bikes, so to speak. But I think the coolest thing would have been out in the snow on our Harley-Davidson snowmobile. Now, what we just saw here, they were pretty well short-lived items for Harley-Davidson. Now let's show you something that's been around since 1957. Jim, my very first bike was a Sportster. This is what? The longest continuously made model for Harley-Davidson.
It was a lot of people's first bikes. A lot of people they loved the thing.
This is probably one of the most customized bikes, and part of it because it's been around so many years.
It's an eminently customizable bike, particularly in the 60s when, the chopper movement really kind of picked up.
And people wanted a lighter, go fast bike. which you could do that with the Sportster.
Yeah, and it's a light vehicle with a powerful engine, and it's had an amazing resurgence, in the last 10 years. I think it's not like it's old now and people don't care about it. This is one of our most popular models right now.
'1981 was definitely an exciting year for Harley-Davidson, and that was when the company went back to its roots, so to speak. And this particular bike means a lot to the company because it was the first of being back to just Harley-Davidson.
Yeah, there was quite a ceremony in our factory in York, Pennsylvania, and this was the bike that rolled off the line, and it felt as a part of the company kind of coming back to its roots, and headquarters back to Milwaukee, a heritage edition, and a motorcycle that has a lot of styling cues that look back to kind of the style of the late 40s, with the fringed bags and everything. And this particular one has on the point cover there a little, commemorative thing, but it was one of the beginnings of a lot of kind of limited edition things that we did over the next few decades.
Here we're with one of the greatest bikes that Harley-Davidson has ever made, and it's one of their CVOs. These things are amazing. I mean, the color, the paint job, everything is just over the top. And, in particular, the paint, right? You want something that's going to really accentuate that paint, especially this beautiful metal flake that's in here. You want that real pop, that real wet look, right? Well, that's what F11 is for. Not only do you get that amazing, depth of image and shine, but I mean, you can do the whole darn bike, Mike.
Oh man, I tell you, the bike owners know it is very difficult to keep a bike clean, right? I mean, you'll waste a whole weekend.
Oh, you don't realize how hard it is to actually detail a bike, but it's a long time.
Yeah, I mean, F11 gives you your Saturday bag, but like this bike here, I went over it real quick in about 15 minutes.
Literally, yeah.
Literally 15 minutes. You could never do that.
Yeah,
with any other product.
which means what? You can ride more.
Right. And we're talking the engine.
Yeah.
No Q-tip in the fins, just spray and go.
That's right, because you're safe. F11 is extremely safe, with heat sources, all the above. Whether it's the pipes, you get bluing, this helps reduce that. Whether it's on your motor and the heat issues, there's no issues. And it brings back that powder coating, whether it's the leather, the powder coating, the paints, I mean everything.
Yeah, like the powder coating on the motor, you can literally spray and leave it and just dab it.
That's right.
You don't have to wipe it. And like bugs, like when you go riding, bugs are a nightmare,
Yeah.
So it's so much easier to get them off. You just take a wet microfiber and wipe them right off and they release.
Well, and also we get a lot of people with the large windscreen.
Right.
And they love it because it's so hydrophobic, and you get caught in the rain in a bike. I mean, you're already, good luck with that. But when you have something that everything wipes right off, it just makes your life that much easier, and the visibility is incredible. But, if you want to learn more, you can always go to our website at topcoat.tv.
Well, what's really cool to see is what happened in 2003 when the company celebrated its 100th year anniversary, building this bike, dismantling it, sending it around the country to the different facilities, having more than 6,000 signatures of company employees. That is pretty cool. We'll have more of Top Coat's Magnificent Machines right after this.
Top Coat's Magnificent Machines is brought to you by Brothers Truck Parts, your #1 source for 1947 to 87 Chevy and GMC truck restoration. AP Laser, leading the way. And by Top Coat, make life easier.
Welcome back to Top Coat's Magnificent Machines as we continue our visit at the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm standing in front of a bike that looks like we already looked at it before, but it's not. This is a 2008 Harley-Davidson Crossbones model that was made for the movie Captain America. They needed one like this, though, and a newer model because it was going to be going through a whole lot of stunts. From Hollywood to one of the greatest entertainers of all time, Elvis Presley. But he wasn't there yet. purchasing this bike right around his 21st birthday back in 1957, right around the time that he had recorded Heartbreak Hotel, but it wasn't a hit yet. So when Elvis purchased this bike for $903, he had to go on a payment plan for $50 a month. Creativity really knows no bounds, and I've seen so many super cool Harley-Davidsons over the years, but you guys have got some in here that almost lean folk art.
Yeah. I mean, this is for many people, you know, a canvas for personal expression. It's one of the amazing things about Harley-Davidson's I actually asked Willie G. Davidson, who designed so many of these bikes, like, what do you think about, you spend all of this time designing what you think is a beautiful bike, and then somebody buys it and they change it. And he's like, I think it's great. You know?
Sure.
This was, you know, this one, the bike itself is not so customized. It's just everything that's been added.
What about King Kong?
There's a Radio Shack radio on the thing from the 70s, so having started all the way back then, and you know, there's scuba tanks for the air horns, and you know, doorknobs and caddy tail lights, and like you said, you know, it's 2 knucklehead engines running through one primary electric start, years before Harley had an electric start, because you can never kick that thing over. It's a real marvel of engineering, in addition to being quite an aesthetic statement.
Time now for Top Coat's Top Pick. And this week, that honor goes to this 2004 Harley Night Train. Now, it looks a little rough, but that's because it survived a 4,000-mile trans-Pacific crossing inside a shipping container following the 2011 Japanese earthquake and tsunami. For more than a year, the bike rode the current from Japan all the way to British Columbia, and it's been left in its salty and sandy condition at the request of its Japanese owner.
Well, that's all the time that we have for this week's Top Coats Magnificent Machines. We'll see you again next week.